I'm Dave.
And I'm Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back to the Starship Texas for the 96th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek all the time. Today we're talking about Picard Season 1, Episode 6, The Impossible Box, written by Nick Zayas, directed by, I'm going to probably butcher this, but Maja Vrvilo, possibly.
Yeah.
You may notice we're down a man today.
Yes.
Fatheree has been captured by the Cardassians. Fatheree is sick. I don't think it's a coronavirus, but he's not feeling great. Voice is kind of shot. So it's just the two of us running the show. We're going to be wild and crazy.
Yes, yes. All right, all together now. I've got faith.
Now we have to do his dumb song. What's his dumb song? Fatheree, by the way, is right here off to the side and will no doubt jostle me if anything particularly crazy goes on. We've also got notes for him. In fact, I'm going to cut to his opening statements. Fatheree has reminded me through a visual sign thing of Soji on the Borg cube. Soji on the Borg cube! That was all right. All right, so this latest episode had like the big reveals about the Borg cube and sort of what the nature of what they're looking for, and we're going to kind of do our usual little round table of opening statements, beginning with our absentee showrunner Fatheree. I'm reading this what he's written up here. Forgive me if I stumble a little bit, Fatheree. So, Fatheree writes of the episode that the show continues to make fantastic contributions with the lore as far as Romulans are concerned, and now it does a bit of that with the Borg. Just as last week's episode largely built on what came before in Voyager, this week's episode does a bit of the same, but with Star Trek First Contact and Picard's story with the Borg. A few things that he likes the most. He loved that Picard's visit to Hugh and the artifact might have actually helped him heal with his own Borg trauma. He loved that Elnor continues to be a favorite character on the show. And the ending of this episode with his awesome catchphrase, "Please, my friends, choose to live." That was super awesome. I think we can all agree on that. Yeah. And he loves that he has no idea what's going to happen next on the show. And the remaining episodes will likely be full of surprises for him. So, Brian, you want to go ahead and rebut that? No. What are your first thoughts on?
I really liked the episode. I don't think it was quite as much of a kick in the emotions as the last one was. Mm-hmm. So I think we finally reached a point where I can't say, "Oh, this was even better than the last one."
Interesting.
We might have, but this was good. This was solid. It was enjoyable. There were lots of fun moments that I loved. I do think Fatheree's right about I'm not really sure where we're going from here. Mm-hmm. I did watch the trailer for next episode, so I have a slight hint about what's next, but only in the most trivial of manner. Plot-wise, I really don't know where we go. I mean, everything we've seen has been this Borg cube and Picard and the ship and Earth, and it's kind of this big void about after that.
Yeah, they, I guess other than we probably know some characters who are going to show up next episode, and I did watch the trailer, which I don't normally do, but I went ahead and did it. I think because this one was particularly cliffhangery, and I was like, all right, let's see what it is.
Yes.
Any other thoughts?
I enjoyed it. I guess it's definitely the psychology episode. Not only do we get people making jokes to Picard about his id and ego, we've also got delving into whether androids have subconsciouses and do they dream of electronic sheep. And
well, I like in those old 80s and 90s like psychological thrillers that I remember I've seen like some of those, and they would have somebody's dream sequence in it, and like a therapist or somebody would talk them through it, like what does that mean in there, usually building towards some big reveal, and this had one of those dream analysis sequences where you're walking through the dream and somebody's trying to parse it.
And we get what was I say? We also get Picard grappling with his psychological issues of basically traveling back into the abyss. And I kind of, Picard's dealt with his Borg issues in 2 different stories now. Yeah, but he's never been back on a cube. That's true. He's never done, the closest he got was kind of the Borgified Enterprise, which I don't think he could ever quite forget was his ship.
I know we'll talk about this later, but I guess that's a little like, this may be like, I don't know if this is a bad thing to say, but, or just a thoughtless thing to say, but it'd almost be like revisiting a concentration camp or something like that as far as the emotional import. I don't mean to literally say it's the same thing, but it would have that kind of weight and resonance.
Yeah. Now, so we get to delve into some very psychological stuff, both in the jokes we make and in the dream. We open with a dream and all of this stuff. And I was like, psychology was definitely the theme for this episode.
So, I will once again be the party pooper here and say that this was my least favorite episode of it.
All right.
I sort of felt like they were somewhat retreading ground that I've seen before. That I've seen. I watched the Ready Room, their after show with Will Wheaton. And
I didn't get a chance to see that with it. So
he talks to Jerry Ryan, and she's delightful on it. I still recommend the episode, but the. He said that he's like, we've never seen, a Borg deal with the fallout of sort of like becoming human again, or words to that effect. And I was like, well, we did with Seven and Hugh. So like, I sort of feel like those were sort of deeper explorations of it. And I feel like I've seen Picard deal with the fallout of his Borg status in 2 really strong storylines. One, the one where he returns to the farm. What is that called? Family, yeah. And then, of course, Star Trek First Contact, as far as like the big action-y version of it. Yeah. I did like see it moving the plot.
And kind of with Hugh, Borg with Hugh as well. Right. We definitely see it discussed there as
For sure. And I also, although I need to rewatch this episode, that episode of Voyager where Chakotay dealt with the colony of the people who were ex-Borgs.
Yeah.
Picard says something about like he's like I don't he's like the idea of deborging people of unassimilating them on such a large scale kind of shocks him, or he's like I didn't think it could be done, but I was like I don't know if Janeway filed that story away when she got back from the Delta Quadrant, but I'm like, well, it did happen.
Yeah, I guess, I forget, was there a worry that the Borg might find them and re-assimilate them? Because that would be a very good reason. I don't remember the episode very well, but
kind of under wraps.
That would be a very good reason.
And I don't expect them
that under wraps.
to necessarily reference every little episode that might have touched on some of the things they do. But we'll talk about it a little bit more as we go. But yeah, my reaction was like actually mildly negative to this one, as it was a little bit last week. Although last week had higher highs for me. I think that was it. I think the last week's highs were higher. But
so the negativity was just the rehashing of some Borg issues.
Yeah,
and that was otherwise it was fine.
I mean, like it was. There were good things in there. The character development. I think I wasn't... some of the characters whose interactions are somewhat least interesting to me took the stage in this one. So I'm not super into Dr. Girardi's interactions with Captain Rios. Somewhat interesting that the closeness that may be developing, but they the 2 of them, they don't seem to like light up the screen for me. Then there was also some more screen time with the Romulanisters, Narek and his sister. Still known only as Rizzo. I think her name is Narissa Rizzo, or at least that's her fake name. And they're a little bit kind of somewhat dead screen time to me too. So once Picard got on the Borg ship and stuff like that, I thought that was energizing. I liked that he was just going to tell the truth. But before we get into it too much deeper, let's go ahead and let's kind of start at the beginning and then sort of work our way through.
Well, we got a short answer, yes?
Yes, that's right. We should go through the actual basic premise of what happened, how this went down. We were starting to get into the long answer. Here's the short answer.
Yes.
So, Narek finally finds a way to extract the information from Soji that he and his Tal Shiar sister have been seeking. Through Romulan meditation, he gets her to explore a dream she had, which reveals the planet where Bruce Maddox created her and where the other synths are likely to be. Narek is conflicted, but still attempts his duty and tries to kill Soji. However, she's able to escape with the help of Hugh and Picard. Hugh uses Borg's spatial projector tech to zap Picard and Soji away. And that is our short answer of it. Start with the dream.
Okay. I thought that was because we have been starting with flashbacks.
Yeah.
So to start with a dream, which it appeared to be a dream of the past,
a
fake flashback.
Yeah.
That was I thought keeps the running gag, but also turns it on its head and keeps it fresh.
What do you think? What do you think the writers were thinking when they decided to do the flashback thing as the bookend, sort of, or as the kickoff to every episode?
My hunch is they started with we need to do this to make things work and fill people in. And then they realized they had done it for a lot of the episodes, and then they said we should just lean into it if we're going to do this and make it look intentional rather than. That's my hunch of how it came.
I have a feeling that they knew what they were doing with it. That they were like, this is a show that's sort of about bridging, maybe classic Trek. When I say classic, I'm including TNG and all that. But older Trek with the newer generation of Discovery and Picard. And that sort of beginning with something that bridges it through memory will not only serve the purposes of being a little bit of a nostalgia kick and doing an info dump, but also thematically, or at least it acts as a bridge between them. So I have this feeling that those guys, I have to think they're thinking about structure, even as chaotic as we know as writer's room can get.
Yeah, well, I think by the time they were filming, they knew what they were doing. But I would not surprise me at all as if they just stuck in a few flashbacks and then realized that they'd done quite a few of them and maybe they should just make that a thing.
It is possible. If you are one of the producers of this show and would like to reveal your behind-the-scenes secrets, please drop us a line and let us know.
Frankly, if I get to ask only one question of the producers, that would not be it.
Sorry, that's all we get.
I don't want to waste my question on that.
So Soji has this dream of her childhood, and she's walking through this kind of dreamlike house towards what was it? She's drawn to some sort of.
I thought. Well, I mean, eventually she goes into what looks like a botany lab.
Yeah, okay, I couldn't remember
flowers, all those the orchids, orchid hybrids being put together.
The orchid hybrids, is that supposed to be the symbolic hybrid of she and her sister? Was that the symbol that they used early on?
I mean, we're just reading that into it that the orchid hybrid is somehow ties into her and her sister in some way, but or the fact that they're bioorganic androids or something maybe.
Right.
But
I mean, life doesn't necessarily always provide strong metaphors for what's going on with every visual.
I mean, we're clearly supposed to be interpreting the flowers to mean something, and I think we're on the right track.
In the dream, they're blocking her perspective of something going down, and right as when she's trying to get a look at what they're blocking, her dad comes out and scary grabs her and wakes her up, right? Or at least
he shouts at her.
He shouts at her. Yeah. The young actress who played her does have a pretty astounding visual likeness, I thought.
Oh, you're right.
It's a minor thing, but obviously just well cast. You would, even if you knew nothing at all, if they didn't even show adult Soji, her dreaming, you might say, oh, that's probably young Soji.
Yeah, I have to admit, I didn't even question whether or not, does this actress look like her? I just kind of... So seamless.
So she wakes up. She's in bed with Narek, as is generally the case. They're a pretty solid couple now.
Despite the fact that he doesn't tell her anything about himself.
This episode did lead me to think that her relationship instincts are pretty bad. I think because she might understand he's not, that she can't say if he's Tal Shiar, but he's secretive about everything. He reveals that when he starts talking about how she what was it? What was it he reveals in this episode? And he's like, "Oh, I've got ears for people who tell me things," or something like that.
I know he revealed his name.
He revealed his name. And, okay, we'll get to that in just a second. That's a pretty big thing. And I think it was because he had been like stretching the level of trust pretty hard.
Yeah.
Revealing, he kept on dropping those little things because he was trying to manipulate her about her past.
I have to assume that Soji is just either A, is sloppily programmed, and so she just thinks this is how a relationship is supposed to be. Right. Or B, she actually just digs men of mystery, and it's kind of a turn-on that she doesn't know anything about him. It's got to be one of those two, really.
She didn't seem like she was completely alien to just having having relationships at all.
She doesn't come off as socially awkward in a way that you would expect.
But there may be a little bit of that data innocence to synths like that. Yeah. So secrets, like Romulan secrets, are a big thing that comes up in this episode. And what is it he says? That everybody's hiding something, whether they know it or not?
Something like that, yeah.
Now, I believe this is new lore about their names, right? She's like...
actually, well, there's a hint of it that the Romulan commander in the Enterprise incident kind of keeps her name secret, and then I believe whispers it into Spock's ear at one point. But she doesn't really... I don't think there's much explanation as to why that's why she whispers it, but it was taken and...
You can retroactively...
Yeah, well... Diane Duane, who wrote the Raihansu Romulan novels in the Star Trek novel series, picked that up and made a big deal about there's like the public Romulan name and then a family name and then there's the private name that you only share with like somebody you love or your sibling or a sibling or something like that. So it felt like a big shout out to some of the most popular Romulan novels out there, and I did enjoy that.
I don't suppose she didn't get like a thanks in the credits or anything, did she?
I didn't look.
We'll have to check into that. That'd be super cool if they did.
Yeah, I suspect that people who love those novels and are watching this are talking about that bit.
I wonder if that was a big thing in the 80s or something, or that concept. Does that come from any real or culture? Because there's a comic that was a very popular fantasy comic of the era called ElfQuest. That's one of the early big self-publishing successes, one of the big fantasy comic successes of the era. And the elves in it have a secret name that they will only tell to like the person they take as their
elves
lover.
Are nothing like Romulans.
Man, I hadn't even thought about that. There. I wonder, these were actually big enough that Diane Duane might have actually been influenced by these comics.
Oh, quite possibly. It certainly ties in with what we see in Enterprise Incident, but it appears to be just a little bit of weird flirtation she's doing with it. Not like a huge social custom necessarily in the episode, as I recall. Right. So, and she clearly picked it up and made it part of their culture. And some of that was, we had 2 Romulan episodes. Right. And some brief glimpses in the cartoon.
You work with what you got.
So when you wrote those novels back then, you had to take every little thing you could squeeze some culture and continuity out of. You would squeeze and twist.
I noticed that they never looked down at anything. Romulans don't look down.
Yeah. No, it's exactly that sort of thing that might have happened, can happen when you have something that's popular, but there's not a lot to go on.
Now, do you think so I guess we'll talk about this more later, but do you think when he reveals his name later, do you think he really is in love? Do you think he did it intended, or is it still like the final manipulation?
I don't think he realizes exactly how much he cares until he gasses her. And then he's like, this is more painful than I thought it was going to be. I think that's my interpretation of his relationship, is that he was kind of kidding himself about how attached he was becoming.
And he's in the do or die thing. His sister, who seems to have the thing for him and be jealous, because she's always like taunting him about his like creepy, gross relationship with this robot, and are they going to make little robot babies and stuff. She's like super racist about it. It's terrible. If it were another ethnicity, she would be like super racist.
Yes. I mean, it fits with her character.
As it is, she's robophobic. I don't know.
Yeah.
Synthphobic anyway.
Well, I think the Zatvashes are all supposed to be.
It's their defining characteristic.
Yeah.
That same scene where he's talking to her, he's dealing with his like Romulan Rubik's Cube.
Yes.
Let's see, what do they call that thing? A Tan Zekran? Is that what it is?
Tan Zekran? Yeah, something like that.
We're gonna go with it. Which I'm assuming that's new too. They're always adding new.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before.
But I guess aside from it's literally like a puzzle box, and that serves as certainly as a metaphor for sort of the mysteries of the show. Do you think it's they're meaning it to be a visual symbol? He's all talking about the patience required. If nothing else, it indicates the difference between he and his sister. His sister is like, get the answers now, and he's like, slowly. No, so slow.
Yeah. Well, she definitely just smashed the box with a hammer to get whatever she wanted. That's how she. They're definitely putting a contrast. You said you don't necessarily care for their interactions. I've been those two. Narek and what's her name? Narissa.
Or Rizzo just sounds. I can't help but think of when I say that the chick from Grease.
I think, isn't there a Muppet named Rizzo? Rizzo the Rat?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, that's what I always think.
This is a weird pedigree, but Narissa sounds better. Let's say his sister Narissa.
Sister Narissa.
Yeah.
I haven't really enjoyed their interactions that much just because she's kind of simplistic in a weird, creepy sort of way. But this one I thought worked in that it really started to illustrate their philosophies, and she actually had to step back and say, "Oh, you're actually getting somewhere with this. Okay, I'll have to give you some points." So she was multi-dimensional enough to step back and say, "Maybe I was pushing too hard with the hit it with a rock solution."
If I were looking for stuff in season 2, I would just sort of advise them to kind of avoid some of those scenes had a little bit of repetition to them, and I think they needed. The characters, honestly, I suppose in another way, the same way that they kind of used the bisexuality of, who's the Section 31 chick, Mirror Universe?
Philip Giorgio?
Yeah, Giorgio, they made her bisexual, and it was part of kind of making her a retrogressive kind of creepily other, oh my gosh, she'll manipulate anyone with sex, she'll have sex with anyone. I can't help but feel like their sort of incestuous thing is another... I mean, that is granted a somewhat more agreed upon taboo.
Yeah.
But it's sort of... It felt a little cheap to just throw sort of sexuality out there to just make her seem like a creepier Romulan.
Yeah, I do hope she gets to finally... when she's something other than the person harassing Narek, and hopefully gets to become something more than that in subsequent episodes.
Right.
Because at the moment she is probably the weakest character in the series. I would pretty easily
For
say.
sure. Soji's dreams, he hypothesizes, are where her subconscious is starting to come to terms with the fact that she's an artificial being. Yes. And we will see that walked through later on when he takes her through this sort of Romulan meditation ceremony.
Yeah, and that's classic old school psychology there, that all of the stuff that you can't consciously deal with shows up in your unconscious and in your dreams and the dream interpretation and stuff.
In reality, her dream should also have Ronald McDonald walks by and there's a couch on fire and you're like, some of it just doesn't make sense. Yeah, it's not a deliberate symbol.
We do get there eventually.
We do get there.
Surrealism in the dream that goes well beyond that. So apparently some of that psychological theory is not so well supported or popular in the present. However, apparently the Narek is at least a true believer, and since he gets results, it clearly seems to work.
It's a good storytelling device, or it can be, but I also do find it to be a bit of a cheap one. I think I noticed in comics in particular, they tend to do a lot of symbolic dreams, and usually it's like the person who's putting a guilt trip on you or whose relationship you're having trouble with, they'll do really obvious stuff like they appear as a 50-foot giant in there because of their influence on you, and I'm like, it's just, that's stretching it a little too much for me. I don't like symbolic dreams that are that heavy-handed.
Yeah, but on the other hand, we started this series out with Picard having prophetic dreams. So this is nothing compared to some of the dreams we had earlier in this season.
Yeah, and I guess
as far as pushing the boundaries of plausibility.
We still have yet to see if that will end up being having real meaning, or whether that was just kind of story coincidency stuff, just to make it feel kind of serendipitous. Yes. Let's see. Let's talk about Soji's sort of... Not the stuff that leads to her revelation that she's artificial. So Narek tells her that each call she makes to her mother is 70 seconds. By the way, another warning sign about Narek that he knows all this stuff. So literally, like, exactly 70
Yeah,
seconds.
but I can see how she would be so distracted by the weirdness of the fact that, well, she notices that he shouldn't have that fact.
Right.
It's the fact itself is so much overwhelmingly weird and personal that she can kind of, all right, whatever, I have sex with him, I can probably trust him. So, you know.
And her mom, like, that her voice, like, puts her to sleep all the time.
Yeah, that was weird. I guess that was just like rebooting the system and uploading updates or or something.
I mean, I kind of thought that it might just be that they will like even transmit a memory of the call, but otherwise, if that was the case, they could just do it in like 5 seconds. She'd just be like, sleep and remember this data blip, bloop.
Yeah.
And I don't know quite why it would be 70 seconds precisely. Maybe
and then we verified that this isn't just all happening in her head. Because there is an actual transmission.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess I assume they've looked into who she's calling and made sure that that's not where the other synths are. I mean, they must have. I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure Narek would try to tap that.
Yeah, you know.
Well, and then that sort of works in both ways.
Yes.
That's messed up.
Tapping all the possible taps.
the big scene in this, the big revelation that would be like the ending of one of those movies where things all fall into place, the ending of The Usual Suspects or something like that, is when she starts to wonder if she is in fact only 3 years old-ish.
Yes.
And she starts, I don't know what that device is she takes out, but it's clearly...
I assume it's a quantum dating machine that we see back in Enterprise, because in Enterprise, they in the Xindi episode, the first Xindi episode, they find the debris of the Xindi probe that cut Florida in half. Yeah. And they scan it, and it's like got a negative age value or some crazy thing. And they make clear, we've got this gadget that can tell approximately how old stuff is. And it's using quantum dating.
Sure.
And I assume that that's what we're seeing here.
It actually seems like something that would be on the Borg cube for their research purposes. Yeah. So it makes sense.
If they had it in the 22nd century, then you could bet there's some in the 24th.
And the big thing, of course, is that basically every item that she has of any personal value, whether it's a photograph or her stuffed animal, reads as being like 37 months old.
Yes,
indicating her life literally had to have begun roughly 37 months ago.
A normal person who did not have these subconscious worries probably just would have assumed somebody came in here, took all my stuff, and then replicated duplicates 37 months ago, and that's why all of this stuff was replicated, and my original stuff got stolen by somebody.
In a world of replicators, that does make sense.
Now, I assume the reason she doesn't jump to that is, in my head canon at least, that unconsciously she knows the truth,
right.
And so...
Well, Nerek's been poking at it. He mentioned things like records that date back only X number of years.
So somebody playing a prank with a replicator or something is not... Despite being the more obvious, simple solution.
You know those puckish Borg cube scientists? That's the kind of thing they'll do.
And they did it 37 months ago and waited. Eventually she'll figure it out.
Hugh has a weird sense of humor.
The long joke.
This sort of culminates in him telling her that they should try the Zalmak, the Romulan meditation thing.
Yes.
Which involves apparently you walk around some little things on the ground while somebody talks to you.
I don't even know if the talking is necessary. Normally, if you know the ritual, you probably don't need somebody to talk you through it.
Maybe not.
Would be my guess.
I guess, there's as much there to make it a cool scene between the two of them and indicate a connection between them, which may or may not end up being their sort of last moment of connection. Yeah. And that will ultimately kind of end up connecting up with Picard, because he is going to get to the cube in this episode. Yes.
I will say, I loved seeing some more cool Romulan culture that wasn't all just about secrets and stuff.
Yeah.
Or military.
Sure. The meditation thing is all inner reflective stuff.
And apparently it's a pretty big deal, because they didn't just have a holodeck in the corner of the Borg cube. They'd put actual wood flooring. They fully constructed this room.
It's it's the equivalent of having a chapel of sorts.
Yeah. So it's not just a minor thing. It's a pretty big thing in their culture.
Do Romulans have at least canonically on the show, outside of not extended continuity, but do they have religion?
I don't think it's ever been stated one way or the other on screen. Almost everyone who writes EU stuff gives the Romulans one sort of religion or another.
Yeah.
They definitely seem to like the idea that these conservative Romulans have some sort of religion, even if... but
I feel like the Romans...
I don't think it's ever been mentioned on screen.
Like the Romans, they're based on a little bit of ancestor worship in there. Might have been kind of interesting, but... Be that as it may, this is as close as we've ever seen to there being a sort of chapel or something like that.
Yes.
And it is like not a religious, strictly religious thing. It's more of a psychological thing. But that feels pretty Romulan too, even though it's still about uncovering secrets, I suppose.
Yes.
Your own internal secrets and things you're denying. So yeah.
Yes.
Meanwhile, back on the La Serena, they are flying towards the cube, and what all do we have? So we've got stuff with Dr. Girardi. She is wrestling with murder.
Well, that was a question I had. Is she off because she killed somebody that she had feelings for, or is she off because of the horror of the secret? I'm guessing it's because she killed someone, because she seemed pretty perky before she killed him.
Yeah.
And she knew the secret before she killed him. So
yeah. I mean, you could say that doing that brought home whatever was shown to her by was it Commodore O?
Yes.
But that
apparently.
Yeah, or that's at least the running theory was that's when it happened. She goes and she takes it to Captain Rios, who's sexily practicing soccer, or I'm going to say football for Fatheree, who I know as an Anglophile is thinking that. But he's doing some shirtless soccer practice stuff in one of his rooms, and she wanders in on him. Now let me ask. They go from they start flirting pretty quick after he's like, "Hey, can I help you with a problem?" And then pretty much they start kissing a few seconds later.
Yeah.
Had there been any lead up to that?
Not that I noticed. I mean, they talked about that book, but I didn't feel... I didn't think that we were heading in a romantic direction.
When she said space is really boring, I didn't assume that was what she was getting to. But maybe it was. In any case, it seems clear, and she as much as tells him that it's not I'm in love with you. This is that she's kind of trying to distract herself.
Yes.
He knows something is wrong, and she's not really quite ready to start talking about it.
Yeah. My first thought, actually, at the end of the last episode, was that isn't the holodeck program just going to tell, hey, I saw her, she was killing him. But then I realized she's this big AI expert. It would have been child's play for her to go into the holodeck and delete those.
She cleared the cache.
Yeah,
she deleted the browser history.
Yeah, I'm sure she did. So that's not really an issue for me after I thought about it a moment. I guess I was like, all right, we're getting some sex in here. This is not the most gratuitous, sexy moment in Star Trek history.
Well, they just went off to get it on. Yeah. What if he had asked her to decontaminate him with some decontamination gel?
I would have thrown something at my screen. Something soft, because it's an expensive TV, but still, would have thrown something. Yeah,
it would have been another Gornig we could count at the end as an homage to the greatness of Enterprise.
I don't need
the sexiest of them. Okay, but yeah, he's like, he knows that this is not for a lifetime, but that this is something that will help her keep a little bit more sane for at least a little while. And he seems willing to go with that. He seems like really a pretty good guy, by the way. I don't feel like he was, doing anything too manipulative here. He really seemed to, ready to follow her lead on it, I guess is what I would say. Yeah. He knew that she was in a vulnerable place, and I think if she had said, this isn't what I want, he would have been fine with it.
Yeah.
But she was like, this may help me, and he was fine with it.
I think there's this...
Perhaps a little bit more than fine.
Yes. Well, I think there is this underlying idea that he is still Starfleet, even though he doesn't want to admit it, I think. And I think that you can kind of see that in lots of the things that he says and does.
She goes for the older guys. He's not tons older, but a little bit older. And then, of course, the now deceased... why can't I say
Maddox.
Maddox, yeah.
Yes, Maddox.
All right, so then we've got Picard.
For a moment there, I thought she was going to get it. He was going to get it on with Rafi as well. At one point, I was like, "Is he? Oh my, that's going to be silly." Then, thankfully, it did not go there. So,
right.
But for a moment, I was worried.
Yeah, no, I mean, for all I know, they might have had some casual thing in the past. It wouldn't be completely weird.
No, I wouldn't necessarily. It was just the idea that in the same episode he provides his sexual healing to both of the women who are suffering.
Picard, you look kind of angsty.
Yeah. Well, if they leaned into it, I probably would have gone for that. I guess if we're including Picard on the list, sure.
Sure. Captain Rios might go for older dudes, too.
That would be fun. I like people with bald heads. Usually Delton girls, but this will do.
Right. And let's see, later on, by the way, Elnor notices this. So he's, even though he is not real experienced with people, he intuits her issues. He also notices her, awkward looks with Rios, right?
Yes. It is interesting that Mr. I Don't Tell Lies is actually kind of good at, is so embedded in the truth that he can tell when the truth is not going on. That is though he took a while to figure it out with that the last week.
Yeah, I guess an actual heist plot is somewhat so far beyond his level of mistruths that he sees.
Yes,
that he was like, what is even going on here?
I did want to say that Picard does his little rant about the Borg.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so the line must still be drawn here. We are still...
I was ready for... Who's the lady in First Contact?
Oh, Lily, yes.
Lily, yes, that I needed her to come in and grab him by the shoulders and shake him and try and snap him out of it.
I did think... This is the third or fourth time we've had Picard rant about how the Borg have aren't capable of being redeemed, and coming on the heels of a 7 of 9 episode felt kind of really.
Yeah, I thought was a little retrograde, but maybe a little bit necessary for people who don't have the history we do with Star Trek to understand how much it hurt him. If they haven't seen the episode Family, if they haven't seen First Contact, you might need that moment a little bit to kind of get everybody up to speed on it. Now, a few hours later, he's hugging it out with Hugh.
Yeah. No, which again made me feel like, did we really need that?
Yeah.
I get him being scared, but him being Borg can't be fixed.
Yeah.
But last week, no, Borg can't be fixed.
Yeah. He used the cancer metaphor. He's like, they metastasize.
Yeah.
So Rios gets to is okay, I'm assuming you've got a plan as we hurtle ever closer, just a few hours away to the Borg cube.
Yeah.
Picard somewhat unexpectedly.
We do learn a little bit, the neutral zone is still a thing. It's still an act of war to cross it without permission. I was glad that we get some more of that.
But it is described as the former neutral zone, right? I think that's what the little text pop-up said.
Okay.
It said Beta Quadrant, the former neutral zone.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, yeah, dude. But it was still apparently a thing you're not supposed to cross without permission.
Right.
So maybe they don't have the zone, but they still have a border between the two space powers of some sort.
And Rios was saying, he's like, I don't mind doing this. He's like, but you got to have a plan to get us on board the queue.
Yeah.
Picard says he's just going to follow the way of the Koet Malat.
Yeah.
The way of absolute candor. And I guess just say what he wants to do there. But now how do they get to the... I can't quite remember how they get from that to using Rafi to...
Well, they say Rafi's going to take care... Rafi will get us our diplomatic clearance.
But so he couldn't have planned for that previously. Because she wasn't... Theoretically, she was not going to be with them on the way back. It's just that things went south with her trying to reconcile.
Well, he knew she was on board by the time he found out that they were going to the Borg.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes.
This scene was actually the one where she goes and... talks to I guess an ex of hers, who's a Starfleet higher up, and tries to pull some strings. She does sort of just say oh, I'm out here with Picard. He's being wacky, and he's just going to drive up to the cube and start an international incident. I thought it was it was too much for me.
Oh no, that was my favorite scene. That was amazing. I was like, okay, Rafi, you just went from a 7 to a 9.5 on the coolness scale in my love for your character just by that one bit of manipulation. That was amazing.
If you hadn't said 0.5 at the end, you would have said she went from a 7 to a 9. Why didn't you just leave it, Brian?
But because it was better than a 9. I was like, Rafi's amazing. Now I totally see why Picard puts up with all of her shit, because Rafi can accomplish miracles effortlessly well drunk and high. So
I don't know if it was effortless because I felt that there was a internal toll on her. Like she did not want to do this.
Well, yes, but effortlessly in that it took like 3 minutes to arrange what could have been an entire episode for a lesser group of heroes.
It was interesting. They were all just like off to the side, like, please let this work, please let this work. I don't think the Admiral or whoever she called didn't see any of them.
I assume it was set up not to show.
At some point, she, I think, actually asks Captain Rio something, or he says something. But yes, she gets them. She basically this Admiral pulls some strings. I think I also didn't quite buy that they would be able to pull strings after Picard had made this big incident about the Federation on TV.
Well, I guess, there's nothing official. I don't think anyone put in paperwork, do not grant Picard any favors as an official policy from Starfleet.
Maybe not.
So, yes, it might have been, and in fact, it might have even encouraged them, we don't want another Picard incident, not after the last one. We're still putting those fires out from the last one.
Right.
So I could even see that.
If I were in that Admiral's place, I would have thought, letting him on board is going to make likely to make a much worse situation. But Rafi worked her magic and got an applause. Not just applause, but they played the classic Star Trek tone.
Yes.
What was it? The bum, bum, bum.
Yes.
I did now because the scene didn't work for me. I gotta say, it didn't work for me, and I felt it was unearned. I was actually much happier. I think when. If they had saved that for me for when he met Hugh and they had their sort of bonding moment, that felt more like a time for the earnest Star Trek than a con job.
I will admit the music felt weird to me. If you want to say that was bad, I'll go with you on that. I didn't know quite why that music was there, especially given that she has no sense of triumph. She just wants to go back to bed.
Yeah.
She's like, fine, I did it. Can I go now? It wasn't like it was a big deal for her. She was just tired and not in the mood for it.
Yeah. Poor Rios, once again, he seems to be the shoulder for people to kind of cry on and to help out people. And he has a history, of course, with her.
Yeah, that one worked much better just because they knew each other, they had a history, and he wasn't there was, and it didn't turn sexual, so on multiple levels.
Right, he basically goes and he kind of tucks her in. So yeah, I liked that, but just a little dodgy the getting there.
I loved it.
There's
best part of the episode
when they did all the flashbacks to Picard's Borg time. That was all new footage, right? I don't think they were using any footage from his original.
No, I think some of that. Let's see, the stuff he sees in his head, or what he saw on the screen.
I guess either.
Well, the stuff, it looked to me like the stuff he saw in his head were scenes from First Contact, for the most part.
I was thinking that they might have done, new special effects and all that stuff.
They might have messed with it to make, because it was obviously just film stock, and they made it look more dreamy, but I'm pretty sure those were just shots of the Borg from First Contact that they spliced in to get those flashback moments.
Fair enough.
At least it sure looked like
Fatheree is posting to us on a note to say none of it was new. So,
okay, all right. We'll grant you this didn't feel new.
I assume that Fatheree knows what he's talking about.
Yes.
Even though he's sick and addled, and who knows what we can trust.
Yes, but his knowledge of Trek, even when he's sick, is still greater than most other human beings on this planet. So.
Now, when they beam him over, he's got a restriction. He can only has to beam over to a certain area, and they beam him over to the scariest, Borgiest part of it.
Well, I don't know if it was the scariest, but it was. There's nobody there. There's a walkway with no safety railings.
Right. When we
all
first
dark.
see Soji and stuff, we see there's areas that are kind of brightly lit living quarters and kind of normal looking cafeterias and lab environments. Why did they?
Now I forget. Was Hugh the first person who meets him, or besides those other two drones that just grab him?
Yeah, like I said, it was a bit of a weird thing. Unless you were trying to
he's the director. Hugh is the director, right? So it might be that he saw that
he is puckish. It was another Hugh prank.
It might be that Hugh, in a sense, yes, but he was pranking the Romulans, not Picard. It might be that Hugh saw, it's Picard. I'm not going to have him show up in the reception room where the Romulan guards are. I'm going to divert him to a place where
better than I liaise with him.
Yes.
Than a bunch of panicked Romulans, who, by the way, later on, he straight up talks, and I don't know if this had come up before, but he straight up calls Narek a spy.
Yeah.
So had he said that words to that effect before, or said that to Soji?
I don't believe so. No,
I just thought I actually really liked that he was canny enough to have clearly picked up on it.
Yeah.
And he just says it as a fact. He's like, yeah, she's seeing this Romulan spy.
Yeah. Well, even she seems to have sort of accepted he's probably Tal Shiar.
It's true.
So
It's true. I don't think she was so naive she had stopped considering it. She just was rolling with it.
Yeah. But yes, we beam over there. We get Hugh and Picard together, and it's wonderful.
Yep.
I guess you said it was your favorite part. It was certainly my second.
I would say so for sure. Even though that was kind of a particularly warm greeting for them, especially after Picard had just been so anti-Borg. But
yeah, again, that early scene, they must still pay. Seems like it should have been cut.
The continuity between those two moods is stark.
Yes.
That said, some of the big things that I wanted from this show in my top 10 was one. The biggest one was that Picard has friends, and Hugh fulfills that.
Yes.
He's got, and it also reflects like a very specific episode. Of course, that arguably letting Hugh go back to the Borg, but not as a weaponized Hugh, but just as an individual, was one of the biggest decisions he ever made. Got him in hot water with Starfleet. It's one of the Picardiest moments. He was getting past some serious stuff in that episode. In a weird way, some of that stuff, I kept remembering the episodes that this was kind of nodding to, and I liked those episodes better, which is a little tricky. Because they were that sort of moral conundrum Star Trek that I want to see. I still keep wanting Disco and Picard to push a little bit more into that territory of wrestling, that very actively wrestling with moral problems.
Yeah.
And having making mistakes and having to change your mind. And there is some of that dealing with the Fenris Rangers is happening, but it's weird. I think maybe because I was a little off on this episode in general, I was inclined to look even more negatively at times at stuff like that. But happy with that scene. Hugh catches him up to speed on on what's going on the thing. He talks about the XBs, the former Borg, and impresses Picard with the sort of recovery efforts they're doing with them.
I like that he's a Federation citizen. I don't quite know how we got to that point from the end of
Descent.
Descent, yes, Descent Part 2. Yes, yeah. I don't quite know how we got there, but whatever. It's been a long time. Maybe maybe he brought those Borg back to the Federation at some point, and maybe they're running the others. I mean,
I think it would have to be something like that. It'd be nice if they told us. I don't necessarily need them to, but it'd be kind of nice if they at some point were to say. But
yeah,
that's probably something for an expanded universe story. Picard does make a point of mentioning that when he sees them removing all the grafts and healing them up, and that they're scared and stuff like that, he says that it changes how he lenses the Borg, and that they're kind of more as victims, which again, I would have thought Hugh himself, 20 years prior, or 30 years or whatever it's been, would have been actually when he would have made that change. But you can see it and not truly feel it.
Well, and I think
he felt it in the moment.
And there's also there's the saying you don't eat the pig
right.
There is got to know Hugh. This was this one individual. Right. Here it's the whole community is victims.
Right. Father, I don't know who that is.
That's a reference to First Contact, the guy that he guns down with the machine gun. so Fatheree is mentioned that Picard had no qualms about gunning down Ensign Lynch on the holodeck in First Contact.
Was that who got Tommy gunned?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that was and that they weren't victims there either.
Look, if you got an opportunity to drop security protocols on the holodeck and Tommy gun somebody, you take it. You take it. It's a good one. It was cool.
Is that the rule of Barclay?
Yes. Let's see. Where do we go from there?
We go hunting Soji.
Oh, right. Who is off doing the dream sequence. She is actually off the grid because he did some... Narek must have done some Tal Shiar cloaking of her. Or this room.
And it appears to be the room, because once she leaves the room, she shows back up on the grid.
Right.
So it's something to do with the room.
Basically, and so let's get to the end of her dream. In the dream, she finally saw what was behind the orchids. Narek kind of guides her to this, and she sees what's a symbolic version of an unassembled version of her, made out of wood. It had this like sort of
Yes.
polished, burnished wood sort of look. Very much like sort of Data's symbolic dreams and things like that.
Yes, and very Pinocchio.
Very Pinocchio, 100%.
Yes.
And so this is, I guess she comes to her realization. Now, Narek wanted this. What is he getting out of it?
He is getting the description of the lab and the place, and that's what he wants. And apparently,
I was lucky that dream was like so sort of specific. But yes, through like a skylight or something, she saw 2 red moons and like lightning storms.
And said there was lightning.
It's Nero!
Yeah.
Nero's back!
Oh no! Space lightning! Yes, Nero! Nero's returned.
But yes, he's like, he tells his sister, or I guess she's watching too, or listening in.
Yeah.
And she's like, scan for all lightning storm planets with 2 red moons.
Yeah, she's in a real hurry for that. Whereas he's kind of like, that's all we need. We're done here, shutting the program down. Whereas I would have been like, I would have kept getting more facts. We don't know if that's enough yet. But
dramatically, they had gotten their bit of information they needed, and he turned on, some kind of radioactive gas?
Yes, in a device that looks amusingly similar in general design to the Thaleron bomb left in the Romulan Senate. Apparently, that's just how you do bombs if you're a Romulan.
This was less gory than that.
Yes, but you leave a little device on a table that opens up and shoots something into the air that kills everybody. That's how you do a bomb if you're a Romulan.
I mean,
apparently.
I kind of like it. It feels Romulan. I guess he probably didn't have it in him to just disrupt her, but like in doing so, like she did trigger. And we know that, like, her sister, when she got triggered, became a kung fu fighter. And she does, too. And she starts, like, tearing up the floor so well that she gets out of the room.
Yes, which I don't think... I'm guessing he didn't see that. I don't think that was a plan on his part. That, she'll just rip through the floor. It'll be fine.
He seemed sort of shocked when it happened. Yes, at least the actor was playing it that way.
Yeah,
maybe later on he's going to say he's like, oh, that was all part of the plan. So she escapes, and she's suddenly back on the grid, and Hugh and Picard catch up with her, and they start, like, running around. Is it Hugh who's leading them?
Pretty much, yeah. Hugh has a plan.
He's got a plan, and they end up going to the chamber for the Borg Queen.
Yes.
Do all cubes have a queen, or because there was?
I think they all have a throne room for the queen. I think the queen is only generate. Well, my headcanon has always been that you only generate a queen if you need a queen, and otherwise you just kind of use the vinculum or the central plexus. I always get those two mixed up. To you have one of them keeps that cube, all the Borg in that cube connected, and then the other one connects you to the rest of the Borg network. And generally, I think it seems like if you have both of those working, you don't generally need a queen. But when, like, for example, the queen shows up when they go back into the past, and now they can't access the network. So. Perhaps, or that cube might have been so far away in Earth that it couldn't access the network in general.
Right.
So you probably would have a setup for generating that queen. For a while there, I thought, and this is the Borg Queen's escape sphere, and there was going to be a sphere that launched out the side of the cube, and that's how Picard got away.
I was worried in this scene for a minute that Hugh was about to betray them. Oh. Because they were kind of like, oh, we're in the Queen's chamber, and I was like, oh, is he like somehow turning him over, and this is like some gambit within his gambit, or he's had his own thing. So I was actually very relieved to find out that he seemed to be all on the up and up.
I never doubted you. So,
yeah. I was ready for him to turn into a traitorous Borg because they just metastasized. A line must be drawn here!
Yeah, Picard turns out to be right. All Borg are evil. Then he's going to hunt down 7 of 9. And
thematically, it would have been horrific. Yes. But that's why I was like, oh no. when the possibility, I just sort of sensed like maybe they were headed this place.
The architecture of the Borg cube, with its more black panel-y and these more geometric and less confusing pile of tubes and stuff.
Yeah.
I had sort of been assuming that was a Romulan influence, that the Romulans had gone on and made the place look a little less Geiger-esque and creepy. Mm-hmm. However, when we go into this secret chamber, we see the exact same of stuff is going on. So clearly,
just a rethink.
Either we have rebooted the look of the Borg, or as Hugh sort of implies, it's new technology. The Borg have actually evolved, and the interior Borg cubes now looks different than it did back then, which is plausible. The Borg are always taking new tech. It would be stupid to imagine it wouldn't change how they look.
And for me, I'm just always like, this is just the stamp of the new visual effects team. They just decided on this probably because it led them to it was a color scheme they liked. It gave them dramatic lighting, but. You've got the continuity possible explanation.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Borg have always been lots of blacks and silvers and curves. Like the Borg Okuda graphics were like green circles with green curly things connecting them. And the right angles wasn't really all that common of a Borg thing. And this is all right angles. They're like cube inside and out. It's a cube made of cubes.
Yeah.
And like the platform. So when they say this is the Queen's chamber, I was like, oh, I kind of think it would have been fun if they had recreated the Queen's Chamber from Voyager. Oh, well.
Yeah, but jumping back to this, there's Elnor sneaks over because they're going to get attacked by people, and he disobeys Picard's direct order. He's like, do not come for me. Whatever you do, he still does it because that's who he is.
Yes.
And he's there to hold off guards. And he chops a few of them, right?
Yeah, he shows up just as the guards are about to catch them and chops them up. And you get to see body parts flipping through the air, which I thought was, that's intense for Star Trek.
Yeah, he's pretty hardcore.
Sprays of green blood and everything.
Now, the spatial projector, which we may talk a little bit more about when we get to our Gorn eggs at the end. But it's essentially a portal that they can open up. Stargate, if you will, yes. I guess we're going to see more of that in the next episode.
Yes.
I kind of thought they were all going to go through.
Yeah.
And I was happy because I kind of want... Hugh is one of the more intriguing characters for me, and I'd like to see more of him in the show.
Yeah.
Maybe I wouldn't mind if he found a ongoing role in the next season, assuming he survives what is to come.
Yeah, I'm going to be kind of upset if they off Hugh next week.
Yeah.
Which from the trailer looks like that could potentially be on the cards, and I'm like, I mean, they didn't show that, but I was just like, because
I didn't catch that. Is there some implied danger to him there?
Yes. And there was I got that we offed Icheb, but I think offing Hugh, I think, might be a step too far. I don't know, and I love Hugh. People, I just don't want to lose Hugh.
He is a symbol of how Picard's benevolence and thoughtfulness and integrity back, 20 years plus ago, how it changed the shape of the Borg and, provided them with this great ally. He's one of his wins, I guess what I'd say. And I want the wins to stay wins and not get overturned. But we'll see. I'm not gonna speculate too much. So they go through and they have to
They leave the Elnor behind, which felt incredibly gratuitous to me.
Yeah, I thought that they could potentially all go through this thing, but
I was like, okay, they don't have time to rig up a time delay, so and they have to switch it off and close it up. So I guess Hugh has to stay behind. But Elnor,
he said something about hiding the room again.
Yeah.
Is the idea that they don't even know? Is it off the grid?
Apparently, that's what Hugh implies.
It just probably looks like just like plumbing.
Well, since Borg cubes are so repetitive in design, it might, if no one looks too closely, they might just assume it's another set of alcoves.
It's not the Borg themselves searching for them, but Romulans on this alien Borg cube.
So if you didn't want them finding it, I don't want the Romulans having spatial trajectors. I'm going to make sure they don't find this bit.
So they're I guess the Romulans are just running around in the areas near to where they know they last saw them.
Yeah.
And so Elnor is going to have to take on a whole bunch of dudes, and that's how we got our big cliffhanger ending.
Yes.
Is him walking out. To compare it to another franchise, it's like when River in Firefly faces off with all of the, oh my god, what are they called? Reavers. And the door closes behind her.
Yes.
What's his name? Elnor gets a cooler line than she does because that's when he repeats his, please, my friends, choose to live.
Yeah.
Very cool way to wrap it up.
I like the wrap up. I just didn't. The justification for why he stayed behind felt weak to me.
I'm going to agree with you there.
Yeah, especially since the other guys hadn't even shown up when they say, "Oh, you have to stay behind." Yeah. No, there's nobody here. Let's go.
You could have been just like, "Here, I know another hiding place. I'm a Borg and I know the coolest stuff."
Yeah. Yes, Fatheree is saying he needed cover for Hugh so he could hide the room. But there weren't any other guards there at that point. And he had to predict... I guess you predicted those other guards were going to show up.
I mean, I guess the spatial protector...
And so did Elnor. Elnor somehow predicted those other guards were going to show up.
Presumably they might be able to go and, look at the projector and say, look, it says where they went. Let's go, too.
Yeah.
Or they could have fathomed it, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's our big cliffhanger of the episode.
And again, like most Picard episodes, it stops, and I'm like, oh, that's the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although this was a longer episode, it was nearly a full hour.
Yes, yes.
So, but it still felt like you're like, oh, we're just getting going.
Yeah. But yeah, it seems like most of the episodes of Picard surprise me when they end. I don't hate it or anything, but they do surprise me. So I guess one thing I did not mention, it appears that Narek has a foot fetish.
I don't think I noticed that.
Because anytime he wants to do something with Soji, he's like, you got to take your shoes off.
Oh, you're right.
That's a motif. Once can be overlooked, but twice, that's a thing.
Interesting, yeah. So, meditation...
I'm not going to kink shame, but, I mean, that's definitely a thing.
You're talking about meditation chamber and...
the sliding up and down the course.
Slide, the Borg slip and slide.
Yes. And, of course, I don't think she's wearing boots in the bed either. Yeah. So, it might be all about those feet.
Interesting. I hope it is.
Perfect android feet.
This is a good tie-in, Fatheree points out, to Tarantino's possible upcoming Star Trek.
Oh, yes. And we could have people with swords and blood spraying everywhere and body parts flipping through the air, too.
Tarantino's watching this wishing he was working. Yes, he agreed to work on that.
This is all designed to lure him back to his Star Trek movie.
Now, I'm skimming through my notes since we've kind of wrapped up the main stuff on the show. Before we get to the Gorn eggs, I'm looking to see if there's anything I didn't cover. And I think we've hit most of it, but I did want to mention two things. One is that, or a few things maybe. Dr. Girardi at one point says something that sounded almost straight out of Dr. McCoy's playbook from Trek '09. She says, "Why do you like it out here in space? It's cold and it's empty and it wants to kill you." So she's apparently not enjoying being off Earth. But I liked the line, and it did remind me of McCoy.
Yes.
Also, she says to Rios when they're about to hook up, she says, I just like this exchange, and his exact response. She said, "I've never slept with the captain of anything before." And he goes, "Well, I recommend it." Again, he wasn't pushing too hard, but I thought it was kind of it's cool.
Yeah. You seen those holodecks? There's an we can get all those holodeck programs running at the same time. Trust me. It'll be like Dr. Manhattan. So.
Narissa, aka Rizzo the rat.
Yeah, Rizzo the rat.
She did, for the first time, I don't think it had come up yet, but she did say the L word, or that, she's like that she knew that he loved her, right?
Yeah. And
also that she was like that they were looking for the homeworld. Was that the first time it was explicitly mentioned?
I think that was the first time that word was used. They were looking for where the other synths are.
Yeah.
But describing it as a homeworld is I think, a bit new.
There's a point at which Raffi asks... this is sort of a big moment where she says, "What does the Tal Shiar need from a synth?" They've known about the Tal Shiar's involvement this whole time, and she's, all her conspiracies, I think, tie those together. And I sort of felt that this was one of those small things in the episode, but made me feel like, well, we kind of were asking that question, I think, as far back as the second episode.
Well, I think up until
because it gets answered in this one, they wanted to reiterate it.
Well, I think the thing is up until this point, the assumption has been that the Zat Vash just want to find and destroy Soji.
Right.
When they get there, Raffi is immediately convinced that they, for some reason, are holding off on that.
Right.
Which means that there's something more to this than just kill the android Soji, and that's what she's puzzling about, which is, again, made me like her character because she's smart and she's thinking and she's figuring out stuff without even going over to the cube that Picard hasn't even noticed.
That's true. That's a good point.
And I like that. I like that she was like, "Oh, Raffi's got a real brain in her head, man. Look at her go. Go, Raffi."
Does anybody know where Picard and Soji went? Like, does the crew of the La Serena?
Yeah. They say first they tell Hugh where to set the trajector.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of it. But I assume it's a planet name.
Yeah.
It sounded like, and then he calls the
La Serena?
La Serena and says, meet us at this planet.
Okay, so they do have a directive. They're not just left hanging there while the cube goes crazy.
Yeah.
And probably the person that Rafi got to get them on board is like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Now it's a diplomatic incident.
I was kind of expecting when we got on the cube that the something horribly bad was going to go on with the Borg and green lights were going to flash, and we didn't get any of that. So I was surprised.
A little surprising. You would think that Elnor would have had to do that at some point.
Yeah,
I don't know if enough Romulans start coming looking for him, then maybe they'll have to turn on the Borg to help them.
Yeah, I don't know. There could be more happening. Maybe that's how Hugh gets out of Hugh and Elnor get out of their problems or something.
It occurs to me it's a little mildly disturbing that poor Elnor has only had to kill his own people thus far.
Yeah.
Yeah, just something to think about.
Yeah, Picard didn't exactly emphasize that when he hired him. Oh, by the way, you're going to be killing lots of Romulans. You know how so many of your people were killed in that supernova? You're going to kill a lot more.
You're working to kind of recover, and really every Romulan life counts.
Fatheree chimes in, Nepenthe.
That's one of those Romulan, or that's like a Roman word or a Greek word or something like that.
It is the name of the world that Picard and eventually the La Serena. La Serena is headed to.
And it's apparently the episode title for next week.
Oh, well, okay then. Okay.
Any link to Rurapente?
We haven't done Klingons yet. If we're going to head into Klingon space.
I mean, maybe. Right. Nepenthe is from the Odyssey. Fatheree has informed us that it's a drug that you can take that will help you forget.
So they're going to Planet Forget.
Yes.
Forgetful planet. I wonder what they're going to forget or try to forget.
Well, I'm pretty sure the planet wants to be forgotten. That the synths themselves are trying that's
not the planet the synths are on. That's just where Picard picked to escape to.
That's true.
So, in fact, from the trailer, I think we have a pretty good idea what he finds there. But I hadn't thought about forgetting anything on this planet. Now I'm curious as to what we're going to forget.
Presumably, it'll be a title like that probably will have some thematic resonance out of it.
I would hope so. Be throwing something like that around without some sort of.
You got to be going somewhere, literary people.
Yes.
All right, let's go ahead and jump on to our own Easter eggs, aka Gorn eggs. First Gorn egg to mention is deals with android dreaming. I'm reliably informed that androids have dreamed before in at least 2 episodes, notably the TNG episode Birthright and Phantasms.
Yes.
Next Gorn egg, Picard was last seen on a Borg cube way back in Best of Both Worlds, parts 1 and 2. It's been a while.
Yes.
Time enough for him to be particularly uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
Which is why I would for sure transport him over to the scariest part of it.
Another good one, my favorite probably Easter egg, was that Picard Googles the artifact, and we get an image, a collection of images from other Star Trek episodes, including our first scene from a Deep Space Nine episode, the DS9 episode that I always butcher, Inter Arma Enim Silent Lagus.
Sure.
Is
that in Latin?
Yes, and it means something to the effect of in war all laws are silent or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
And somebody told me they'd actually mistranslated it, but
why did that image pop up though? That
is the one where the USS Bellerophon is invited to Romulus to discuss Romulan support for the Dominion War, and Julian Bashir and Admiral Ross go along, and Section 31 uses Julian Bashir to do a schemy, plotty thing.
Why did it pop for Picard when he searched it, though?
Well, he looked up Romulans and the artifact and the Borg, and so I think they just wanted to show that this is a picture of the Romulan Continuing Committee, the leadership of the Romulans back during the time of the Dominion War. Anyway.
Oh, okay. I'm actually not, because I don't know that era well. Romulan Continuing Committee is not a term I know.
It's the Continuing Committee is like the secret version of the Senate, according to at least some of the fan EU that's tried to reconcile where does the Senate and where does the Continuing Committee sit.
Okay.
So that was also the episode that revealed Section 30, the person at the top of the at the top of the Tal Shiar command chain, apparently, is a Section 31 agent. I don't know if we're going to be delving into that in this series or not.
That would be a very, very subtle hint if that was going to somehow have any relevance.
I don't know. But I was very pleased to see a shot from Deep Space Nine, and I'm guessing Fatheree also was really in love with that as well.
I'm sure he was. Hugh on the thing, obviously, from the episode, the TNG episode, I, Borg.
Yeah, old Hugh and new Hugh.
And new Hugh,
yes. Same actor, but different makeup.
Yep. And do we also then see, Locutus, or Picard in Locutus mode?
Yes. Which I thought was interesting that they chose to use a shot from the Next Generation rather than the more advanced makeup Locutus from that we see in the flashbacks in First Contact.
I guess the Next Generation stuff was pretty iconic as far as that show went.
Yes. I mean, they're very similar, but yeah. I did absolutely love the way they shot the camera shot straight through the hologram so that you see Locutus's face superimposed, and Picard is like touching the side where the implants would be, like it was a mirror. That was one of the most amazing shots I've seen.
I did think that was super. That was a really great bit of visual imagery.
Yes. Let's see. The comment about the Romulans are in a 250-year bad mood. And that references how long since First Contact occurred between the Terrans and the Romulans back in the Enterprise episode Minefield.
Having not seen that one in a good while, is Minefield, do they know that they're Romulans in that?
They do know that they talk to them audio only. They don't get to see any Romulans. So that
in Kirk's time, it's still true that no one's seen the Romulans.
Yes, but the ship flies up and says, "What are you doing in our minefield? Getting blown up. Well, stop it. Go away." So that's not what it's there for. Or something. I don't know.
Let's see. Next Gorn egg is that Picard, his Borg flashbacks are footage from First Contact, including the Queen.
Yes, I did enjoy. Oh, look, there's the Queen. So,
so there's something interesting Hugh says that I thought was an interesting, as far as like a sort of had some greater weight now too. He says of Picard, he says, "A new name can be the first step to a new identity. I learned that on the Enterprise all those years ago," which of course was again from the episode I, Borg. His original Borg designation, I think is that what they called it?
Yeah.
It was third of 5, but Geordi and Dr. Crusher ended up renaming him.
Yes.
The notion of like dead names, very much something that would be active in our current culture as we become like sort of more aware of like trans people who transition and leave their old names behind. And not just that, but there's, folks on the various scales of gender. So I thought that was a good line too. And in addition to referencing that episode, it's a bit from an episode from the 1990s that still has resonance, a huge resonance today, if not more so than when it did when it was originally mentioned.
Yeah, I took it in a much nerdier way. For me, I was like, so why is 7 of 9 still 7 of 9, and why hasn't she reclaimed her old name or come up with a new one? And then I realized, because Hugh is at peace with himself, and 7 of 9 still struggling with her identity.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I kind of like that, yeah.
Rafi says at one point that she owes Rios 2 strips of latinum. Oh, this was the bet that she placed as to
whether Soji was alive or not, because she should be...
Speaking of dark, that was kind of a dark one.
Yeah, Picard, she was the whole time convinced Picard is just going to show up and find her dead.
Yeah.
Long dead. like already starting to smell.
But the Gorn egg in question is, of course, the Latinum reference, which anybody who's, especially DS9, but also TNG, is the currency of the Ferengi Alliance.
And kind of a currency of a lot of riffraff around in the Alpha Quadrant.
It was a name for that viewers all became familiar with. Fatheree tells me that 100 slips equals 1 strip, and 20 strips equals 1 bar.
Yes.
So, in case you needed to convert that or do any, if you're going to be traveling internationally.
I used to know how many credits were in a slip and how many bars made a brick, but I don't have that information off the top of my head. So.
At one point, Narek is dressing down a Romulan sub-commander because he wants to... I guess it's when he's gaining access to the meditation room thing.
Yes.
And he... intimidates the guy by saying something about sub-commander bars. His ranks are not for idiots. That's a traditional rank in the Romulan military.
I did think that was interesting in that sub-commander is generally like the equivalent of like an executive officer or captain kind of thing in equivalence. So that's a really high-ranked guy guarding that meditation room, which again emphasizes this is important.
Yeah, so, if you were the next Diane Duane, you'd be having to really think about that scene and decide what to extrapolate.
Yeah, it's not like they threw out an Ulan or something, which is a low-ranking Romulan rank.
Right.
They threw out a really high rank there. So
it was apparently also used with the Vulcans during the 22nd century per Enterprise.
Okay.
Soji had a little stuffed animal that they used throughout this, and I was wondering if it was anything in particular. But if nothing else, we just want to say its name is Squoogie.
Squoogie. Yeah, okay. I was wondering if it was Umugatu when I first got a look at it, but it really doesn't look like that.
I have to confess, I kind of would have liked it to be some insider thing like that.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yes, we talked about this one. The weaponized radiation released in a small device that opens on the top is a very similar to Nemesis.
Yep, didn't make you all become a desiccated husk, but it probably would have after a little.
We don't know what it would have done to humans.
That's true.
She's an android, maybe hyper-resistant.
So not to Romulans that spit venom.
Yeah, I guess not. It did seem like that was a very complicated way to kill him. So, and not very pleasant. It wasn't like, well, I'm going to give her this way because it'll be painless. No, she seemed to be in pain.
Yep.
So,
this last Gorn egg is my favorite.
Okay.
You take it though because you know more about you remember this episode better than I do.
I did actually watch this one a few months ago. So, the spatial projector that they have as an emergency escape mechanism for the Borg Queen is in fact a technology used by the Skakarans.
Yep.
From the Voyager episode Prime Factors.
Was that season 1?
Yeah, early
2?
Season 1. Yeah. They encounter basically a species that is more Federation than the Federation. Like they love art even more. They're even more friendly to visitors. They're even more loving stories and fiction and culture and more into, we want to know everything about your culture and I want to use that and assimilate that into our own stuff. And they were also more hardline about the Prime Directive.
They were like, we could get you home, but it's wrong.
Well, I think they said the 40,000 light year thing, I think, was actually from the episode. They said we could send you 40,000 light years, but that was over halfway.
Right.
Like a huge savings.
Right. And that was with the spatial projector.
Yes.
Which we will infer, or as outright said in this episode, the Borg assimilated them at some point.
Yes.
And now it's Borg tech.
Yes. All of the Borg now have spatial projectors, and maybe that explains part of their new look of the inside of their cube.
I wonder if those guys survived it. Like, did some of them get off planet? They have, apparently.
They do have an excellent way to do it, that's for sure. It would be kind of embarrassing if none of them escaped. Let's put it that way. That's a
pretty cool. That's a deep cut to call back Voyager Season 1 just so you can have an escape portal.
It should have been transport beaming created by Scotty.
I feel bad for you because I know you've been rooting for that. If we had you make a list of things you wanted to see in Picard, like 5 of the 10 would be transport.
I don't know if 5, but it would not be on the list of the 10, that's for sure. So,
all right, let's hit up some subspace transmissions, get some fan responses here, starting with Facebook, and these are in response to last week's episode, Stardust City Rag. First up is Benjamin Denophiles, might be mispronouncing that. He says the 7 of 9 arc is interesting, but appears like a surprise on the show. It wasn't written very well, and he says he hopes she's not an element of nostalgia geek service that we'll see in just in one episode.
They basically promise she's coming back because they give Picard the little thing in case you need some help.
Yeah, it's just a question of whether it'll be this season when Dramatic Cavalry, probably, or next season for like another arc or something. Yeah. He goes on to say the treason of Alison Pill's character and the sudden revelation of her past relationship confirmed the melodrama aspect of the episode. We can think the same thing about the Rafi arc, which isn't too much of a surprise. He says the episode isn't very good, despite some fun with the operations and the disguise, and some of the universe building in it. But he says he thinks they wanted to work on too many things. Thank you from our French fan there. I I don't know if those were like precisely echoed my complaints, but I did. It seemed like he thought it was a lesser episode. I kind of ended up in the same place.
Nah.
you and Fatheree
episode was awesome. It was pretty much all gold.
So let's talk about some of the horrors of that episode. Adam B. Owens says, I hated seeing Icheb go out so horribly, and having to get put out of his misery by Seven. But this episode really highlights the tone that DS9 tried when it first came out. Not everything is pretty or shiny in the galaxy like it is in Federation space. There are awful, evil people out there, and some of them are even humans. Particularly like the moment when Seven asked Picard about losing his humanity.
Yeah.
For sure. Highlight of the episode,
yes.
I kind of think. At least dramatically speaking. Travis Behenna says, I'm wondering if Alison Pill's character isn't also an android and doesn't know it, except on a subconscious level. I had been wondering about that early on. I kind of don't think that's the case.
I am going to have to ask for clarification. Alison Pill plays...
Dr. Girardi.
Okay. Yes, Angus. Okay, yes. I wondered about that too.
I don't know what there is to gain from it at this point.
I think it would be ironic if she ran around trying to kill all these androids and discovered she was one. I would enjoy that irony.
Well, it's a very Blade Runner kind of move.
Yeah. But Blade Runner's statute of limitation is long since expired. It is time to redo these.
No, they do a new Blade Runner cut every 5 to 10 years.
All right, I had forgotten about
the statute of limitations from expiring. Robert Q. Garza just said of the episode, shocking. And for sure that seemed to be a reaction that a lot of folks had.
Yes.
All right, let's hit up a few comments from YouTube. Phaetonia said, did you notice Seven's line when she told the story of how Icheb got to the salvage table? She said he was a young science officer. If so, why then was he wearing a red shirt? Interesting question. Any theories? Anything you can work with here?
Because you have to make sure there's an imperfection in the episode, otherwise you will not. You will displease the gods.
It would just be too perfect.
Yes, I have no clue.
That's about as good as you can come up with. I think I'd be interested to hear anybody. You know, this is Fatheree and I often mentioned the old thing Marvel did called a no prize, where readers would send in explanations for mistakes, sometimes slightly convoluted explanations, but meant to indicate, oh, it wasn't a mistake, it was right, and here's the backstory.
Yeah.
So if somebody's got the no prize, and you would get sent a thing that said no prize, it was bizarre and funny. Anyway, if you've got a no prize explanation for that, throw it out there. Let's see if we can get a good one going. Persephone Basilissa says, I was so ashamed that I giggled giddily at that introduction. Now, I'm going to hope that this was the introduction in which we did our awful French accents.
Yes.
In which case, thank you for giving us that. That's all we needed was to make one person laugh.
Yes. and not the introduction of the episode where Icheb died.
Yes, because that's the other possibility. And if that is the case, then that's between you and your therapist.
Yes. Seek help.
Farpoint Station with just a nice comment on this says, made my Sunday. Thanks for consistently positive and awesome content, guys. Hey, super thank you. That's awesome. That felt like something Will Wheaton would say. That's my giddy Will Wheaton imitation there. All right, let's see what else we've got. Let's go to Twitter stuff now. First up, I got Starfleet Boy. He says, the more I watch it, the more I love it. Aside from Jerry Ryan's spectacular return to Star Trek, it also gives us a lot of interesting clues as to what's going on, which I still don't know, but I'm totally excited to find out. All the actors are great, too. 10 out of 10 from me. It seemed like that episode went over pretty well with people who weren't hate or me. Let's see. Captain Pikachu says Rafi's scene with her son is one of the most powerful ones in this story because it's so real and relatable as something that people could experience in real life, and it speaks to the feelings of children who feel abandoned by their parents. I did really like that scene. I kind of wish it had a little more room to breathe because poor Rafi had to just turn tail and just walk away at the end of that.
Yeah.
And that had to be rough. She had gone on this dangerous voyage. Did her kid even know all she had done to try there? Yeah. But I think he was like, I'm trying to get something done, and then his crackhead mom showed up.
Yes. I do want to know what broke her, though. We need that answer, at some point. Not, I want to know why, because in the Federation, I don't think somebody just starts using drugs and being an alcoholic for no reason whatsoever.
We can still hope for that to be a short trek, because although probably that might need more room to breathe too. Yeah. Let's see. Nike Morgan says the beginning and end were very gruesome. Gives it a double thumbs down with thumb down emojis. Jerry Ryan was magnificent. She stole the show. Thumbs up emoji. Jonathan Frakes directing. Excellent. Thumbs up emoji. Generally, I really like the casting of San Diego Cabrera as Captain Rios. Thumbs up emoji. If we balance it out, I believe that is a net +1 thumbs up emoji to the 2 thumbs down for the gruesome opening, which was pretty horrific.
Yes.
All right, I think that's about it for us. Next week, we're going to be discussing the upcoming 7th episode, Nepenthe. Now we know what that means, and we can see exactly what it will ultimately mean for the episode. Yeah. Hopefully, we'll have this posted on Sunday night by 8 p.m. Central Time. What else do we want to mention?
If you have any comments.
Okay. Also, if you have any comments or thoughts on what we said in this episode, if you want to say what it's like to have a fatheree-less episode,
yes.
Let us know. We did miss him, but he was here in spirit. He was literally 5 feet from me the whole time, posting notes, and he had good show notes to keep us going. So, oh my God, it's his hand. He's better. His hand is alive.
Spock lives.
And we will use that as our cue to thank you for being with us this week, and tune in next time for Tex-Trek. And until that next time, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.